Reggie, where are we going? What are you thinking?
Things that fall from the sky.
Things that fall from the sky. Let's take a look.
Boeing moment.
Yeah, actually. All right.
Yeah, this is sponsored.
From someone who has been evaporated.
Yep. Told too
gone.
much. Said too much. Had to disappear. Had to be evaporated.
Things that fall from the sky. It's a show of good faith. I'm posting a script to this rabbit hole. Keep an eye out from Quality Rabbit Holes podcast on the Spotify soon. Oh, okay.
Damn.
If you're like me, well, I mean, how soon if the person is evaporated? But they got gomaged. If you're like me, you'd like to play with slime, but like good slime is the kind you find buried in the back of a shelf in a Cracker Barrel, or just ordered off of Etsy. Okay, there was a trend of people making their own home slimes on TikTok and stuff, right?
Okay, yeah, I do vaguely remember that.
Wasn't that a thing?
Because I remember seeing something about that, and it just made me think of I don't know if either of you did this in science class, where you made, I think it's like boreal. It's like a mixture with the chemical boreal, and you basically get like flubber. You get like a real like malleable, like it's not quite slime. It's a lot closer to like a flubber like texture.
Okay. No, we did it. We made non-Newtonian fluids.
No, we didn't do that. Yeah.
It was like it's solid when you apply pressure, and then as soon as you release, it liquefies, right?
Okay.
But in terms of that, like this, I just bought GAC back in the day. GAC was like a toy that they sold on YTV. Actually, they had ads for it. I don't know if you remember. Like it was gross your sister out marketing, basically.
I don't think of GAC when I think of YTV and slime. I think of uh-oh.
Yeah.
I was showing a friend that I was like, I don't think you guys got this, because it's interesting to see what Canadian shows got over to the Americans versus what didn't.
So here there was GAC, and you bought these, and there's commercials for it. Nickelodeon GAC. Same thing. Nickelodeon is selling slime. I bet you slime doesn't go into anyone's like consciousness without Nickelodeon getting involved, mind you. But yes, they sold this shit, and it would dry up in like a month.
It like turns into like a hard.
Yeah, this container was horrible at keeping it moist. But you did have a toy slime to play with for a while, I guess.
The problem with these, though, is God forbid your house is carpeted.
Oh, yeah. That's getting everywhere.
Because it's getting everywhere. It's losing its like plasticity because it's like picking up like fibers on the carpet, and then the carpet is getting a weird texture on it because of the slime.
But I just for some reason I remember, I guess I started hearing about like slime is coming back, and like people on TikTok were like making their own slime recipes. And I'm guessing that it has something to do with like satisfying imagery, perhaps.
It's that. I think there's an aspect of it that I know a lot of like ASMR channels were doing stuff where they're like fiddling around with it, and it's like loud enough and malleable enough that it picks up in the on the mic.
That makes
a lot
sense.
of people like it as like a satisfying sound.
That makes sense.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, goo is a tag, right?
Floam. Fucking Floam. This shit
I remember
sucked.
this was ass.
It was nowhere near as good. Yeah, look at that. Nickelodeon tried and failed with Floam. Get out of here. It's all about GAC. GAC Nation. Fuck Floam. Scub. Pro Scub. Anti-Scub. Right. Not to brag, I make my own sometimes. Of course you do. I don't know. There's just something so fun and tactile about it. It soothes the twitchy child inside me. Personally, I prefer more silky slimes, but I'll take crunchy too.
Crunchy?
Okay, you lost me. You lost me. The only time I won't accept is sticky. I hate sticky slime. I also hate that we're at the point where it's raining slime. Balls of slime, actually, or jelly. Slelly. Nice middle ground. You heard that right. In some places, it's raining slelly. Slime ball rain. Yeah. In an article called "The Blue Marble Mystery Reigns Over Dorset Garden," The Guardian reports that a man in Bournemouth England, experienced transparent marble-sized jelly balls raining down on his house during a hailstorm. The man, a 61-year-old aircraft engineer, explains that he was about to toss some logs onto a fire pit when the sky got dark and turned yellow. Then it began to hail for around 20 seconds. During that 20 seconds, little blue jelly balls appeared on his lawn. Okay, every time one of these things occur, you hear about ancient stories about this with the frogs and the meat and all that stuff. I'm just like, a hurricane surely rolled by and tornadoed everything up. And then landed in one place, right? That's the only way.
Well, I see this and I'd have to see what the jelly looks like, because I'm almost curious. My brain goes more into at least in this situation, a more of like a weird weather phenomenon where it's like, because it says it hailed and like it was like a weird the sky turned a certain color. So it's like maybe it was like the water droplets are not cold enough to form into ice, but enough that they are able to hold like
some of the consistency
orb form. So it's like you got like a weird like weather phenomenon that like happened in this one incidence that's like not often repeated.
And if it ever happened, then Weather Report can use it.
Exactly. He can drop the orbs on you.
Weather Report. Yeah. It just needs to happen once. Okay. When he stepped on one, it had disappeared. He describes them as very hard to pick up, almost jelly-like. It took a spoon and jam jar to collect them because the exterior shell was fragile and touching it threatened to break open its soft insides. The orbs didn't smell, didn't float, and a scientist speculates that maybe it was frog eggs. It might seem a little weird, but you might be thinking, what if the scientist is correct? What if they were frog eggs? Could they be Orbeez? Let's pivot to another phenomenon for a moment. 7th of August, 1997, gelatinous orbs rained down in Oakville, Washington, which would come to be known as the Oakville Blobs. These clear, sticky nuggets of slelly were white, about the size of rice grains, and as disgusting as you'd probably believe them to be. Apparently, they peppered the ground during a slime storm. I hate this so much.
Storm,
I hate that you picked this, actually. I'm regretting that it was on the table at all.
Well,
a few days later, so it said, people started getting sick. Symptoms of the illness were described as being flu-like. One man reported to having trouble breathing and being violently ill. According to Discover UK article, the Discover UK article, samples were sent to Hazardous Materials Unit of the Department of Ecology in Washington State, who found a strain of bacteria in the blobs that can infect the human digestive tract. Doesn't quite line up with the flu-like symptoms many people reported, but either way, the blobs were bad news. Worse, 5 more reports of slime ball rain allegedly cropped up in the surrounding area. But this is the point where I tell you I don't know what actually happened. The slime balls in the UK seem to be quite real, less sure about the Oakville blobs, and the Washington State Department of Ecology claims to have no record of blob sample it apparently received. There are no concrete answers to what really happened in Oakville. Either way, these 2 weird instances of slime ball rain really stuck with me. And as I said before, that's the only kind of slime I hate, so naturally I had to know more. So I grabbed a shovel, started digging, and my quest to uncover what these jelly balls were, discovered what a star jelly is. Star jelly. Let's pivot for a moment. Star jelly is a scientific name for what the fuck is this goo on the ground and where did it come from? It's a gelatinous jelly found in nature, often on grass, and less commonly on tree branches. Star jelly is white-gray, slightly translucent, and evaporates quickly upon falling. All of this is interesting to me, but the most curious part about it is nobody knows exactly what star jelly is. There's a few explanations and theories. Some posit that it comes from frogs or toads or worms or even colonies of cyanobacteria. Others say it comes from the fruiting bodies of gelatinous fungi, or that it's the byproduct of amoeba masses or slime molds. It could, some say, be industrial byproduct or waste, but nobody seems to just know. Curiously, reports of star jelly date back to the late 1200s? John of Gaddesden, a very old man who is likely dead, wrote in the 1300s of Stella Terrae, describing it as a certain mucilaginous substance lying upon the earth. He suggested it could be used to treat abscesses, though how many people found a cure in space goo, I do not know. One can find mention of star jelly in ancient Latin, Arabic, and even Welsh texts. Several of these texts refer to the substances as having fallen from meteors, hence the name star jelly. And I suppose that if I had been a 14th century peasant, and little clumps of goop started turning up in my garden, especially after a meteor shower, I might assume the same thing. But that's the folklore of it anyway. As I said, nobody has a good concrete answer as to what it is, though a poet in 1910 by the name of T.M. Hughes observed that the jelly, quote, seemed to grow out from among the roots of grass. No ancient aliens to you, not to ancient aliens, you all, but is it possible that Oakville blobs were star jelly? I'm going to say maybe, but that still doesn't explain what the Burnsmith orbs were. For an answer to that, I had to look elsewhere. The moment I hear about shit growing from grass that's like on the ground in that way, I'm thinking of biblical manna from heaven.
Yeah. Well, I see star jelly and I'm like, that sounds like some like Tales of item.
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
sure.
I need to
go collect that
my
side quest.
Well, I'm thinking more like a item you use for like recovery. Like I'm thinking like, you use your star jelly to like increase your like
some
MP
Mario
because you're low.
stuff.
Yeah.
Indian blood rain. Fuck. My dad, Blood Sun Vendetta. My dad actually turned me onto something at this point. I was telling him about this rabbit hole. He mentioned something called Indian blood rain. I didn't believe what I had heard at first. It didn't sound real. Obviously, I had to start looking into this too. And while it may seem like a detour, I'll tie it in quite nicely in the next part, I promise. For this section, we head to Kerala, India, on a lovely cloudy July day in 1957, or September 2001, or June, November, and December 2012, it began to rain. What would have otherwise been a normal, if wet afternoon, however, quickly turned into what may as well have been an apocalyptic warning. It rained blood. Well, okay, it wasn't blood per se, but the scarlet shine of the raindrops could easily be mistaken for hemoglobin. Either way, a red mist rained down on India's Malabar coast, probably spooking the shit out of the locals. It would spook the shit out of me, honestly. I'd assume we'd accidentally release some kind of ancient demon with plans to usher 1,000 years of blood and darkness. Correct. At first, speculators guessed the blood rain stemmed from a meteor that had broken up in the atmosphere from above the clouds, and the discoloration was the result of space rock debris. However, botanists analyzed samples of the rain and discovered that much like blood snow, which are red streaks found on glaciers, blood rain was a downpour of algae, specifically a lichen called Trentipolia. Trentipolia is rich in carotenoids, which gave the rain its red pigment. However, for the rain to have turned red, the lichen grows in local forests. That is it lichen?
I think it's lichen.
Yeah.
The lichen growths in local forests would have had to have all entered their reproductive cycle at the same time, an improbability as noted by scientists at the Center for Earth Science Studies, or CESS, who examined samples of the rainwater in search of its origin. CESS also found no satisfactory explanation for the uptake of the Trentipolia spores in the atmosphere. There are a lot of theories on to how this all came to be, ranging from local weather phenomena to theories about a possible extraterrestrial origin. Point being, no one knows. My personal line of thinking is Trentipolia being a lichen that feeds on nitrogenous compounds and phosphates probably feeds on industrial waste in Kerala, of which there's a significant amount. In fact, Illur, an industrial suburb in Kerala, is considered a toxic hotspot due to its pollution levels, hosting one of the most polluted waterways in the world, being that of the Periyar River. And in the Periyar River, Indian manufacturers dump their industrial toxins, agricultural runoff spins onto the waterway, and domestic sewage mixes with both. So a lot of nitrates and phosphates. Of course, Trentipolia is a subaerial lichen, not an aquatic algae, meaning it primarily grows on tree bark, rocks, and other natural scaffolding rather than being in the water. But it's my guess that the heavy pollution feeds it quite well. Trentipolia, it's quite fun to say, can absorb heavy metals from the atmosphere, alkaline from dust pollution, nitrogenous compounds and phosphates from wastewater, and more. Apparently, algae are known for being pollutant eaters. This might explain why it's so widespread and pervasive, and potentially, depending on how the pollutants interact with the lichen, it may also explain why they're spored at once. Though I'm no scientist, of course, and the speculation is best left to professionals, but we're allowed to spitball if we want to, and I spatballed, and that has something to do with pollutants. Which led me to a wild pollutant, sodium polyacrylate. You see, I had a theory at the end of the blood rain detour as I read about pollution and specifically agricultural runoff, found myself revisiting the Burnsmith orbs, where I found speculation, assertions even, that the orbs were sodium polyacrylate. Sodium polyacrylate, say that 3 times fast, is what's known as hydrogel. You see, it's a polymer used in agriculture to store water and then slowly gets released into the soil. This is particularly handy if you're farming in dry locations and you need to stretch all the rain and water you can get, though. It is used quite widely in agriculture. This compound can also be used in energy production, where it can separate oil and water while fracking shale, and can also be used in drinking water as something called a flocculant, which helps keep water from congealing. Huh. Finally, it's used in diapers to absorb urine. Oh, okay, I know what that is. Yeah, okay, that's the thing that turns it into like the gel state. Yeah. Right. So very absorbent, helps keep water separated, parses oil from water, and stores that sweet, sweet hydration in the soil. Sidebar, but like we bought some, while we were on the road going to New Brunswick, we bought some shittier diapers, and the difference is crazy in their absorbency, and kind of just like they just felt heavier and wetter and like a bag of like water.
Yeah.
Versus the better diapers, you know, like your brand names that like legit kind of rubberize and absorb, and it doesn't feel anywhere near as heavy. So like this shit makes a huge difference. Interesting. Pretty handy. And so now we can perhaps see why the burns with orbs appeared after a hailstorm when we add a few pieces of context. 1, they were only found in the garden, not on the roof of the home or anywhere else. And 2, sodium polyacrylate is an excellent hydrogel and very useful in gardening. If the moisture within a severe, if short-lived hailstorm hit those hydrogel beads in just the right way, chances are they would have swollen up and pushed their way out of the dirt. So case solved, right? Rabbit hole done? No, friends, we're smack in the middle of it.
Oh boy.
Having an answer to the question of the gooey British hydro orbs doesn't quite do justice to the topic of sodium polyacrylate, which may itself be the source of star jelly in the modern age, or slime ball rain, or any number of gooey sightings. It's a super useful compound, but one that comes with a pretty serious catch. Sodium polyacrylate degrades. It does this in many ways. Free radicals, or as I like to call them, bouncy protons, from the sun interact with sodium polyacrylate, knocking off electrons, changing molecules, and altering the chemical structure of the compound. Another way it degrades is through the bacteria in soil, which it uses sodium polyacrylate as a carbon source, effectively consuming its carbon and shifting its makeup. Time, of course, is another one. And finally, squeezing pressurized oil through a small hole. Don't forget, it's used in fracking too. Does it too. Hold on, I lost that sentence.
Squeezing pressurized oil through a small hole.
Don't forget, it's used in fracking. Does it too.
Yeah.
And when it degrades, one of the potential chemicals it becomes is acrylamide. Acrylamide is a carcinogen found in cigarettes. Look, I'm not a chemist, just a goober with a shovel, so please do not start freaking out that your drinking water may have left you that you left on a sunny windowsill is going to turn into a liquid cigarette. I mean, will it? Probably not. Maybe. I don't know everything, but I highly doubt you have to worry. However, I do want to dig into the implications of this. Yes, I kind of tricked you. We were talking about the weather, and now we're in a chemistry lesson from the world's least qualified teacher. But I make you this promise. I did my best to understand what I was looking at. I'm sure if I got some of it wrong, I'd love to speak to an actual chemist about this. Still, for a layman, I probably did a half decent at best, if not non-lethal at worst. So back to sodium polyacrylate. First of all, researchers have found that high concentrations of acrylamide, one of the cancerous breakdowns of chemicals of sodium polyacrylate or oil production, which I mean, oil never leaks, right, guys? We've never faced the serious consequences from an oil spill. So that silly little notion aside, we have to move on to agriculture. There are lower concentrations of acrylamide in soil that's been stuffed with sodium polyacrylate, but it's still there. Plants will absorb in their roots as well, which can still obfuscate better understanding of the chemical's degradation in soil. In fact, high levels of acrylamide have been found in French fries for some reason. Beyond that, potatoes in general. Why? I have very little answer to that, but my guess is starchy vegetables absorb the compound a lot easier than more leafy vegetables do. Some suggest the heat of the oil to fry the potatoes degrades the absorbed compounds into acrylamide, but I do not have the answer to this. Still pretty widespread. I'm kind of just locked on to like, how does something at like that point evaporate?
Yeah.
You know?
Like where does it break down?
Where we go? Yeah. It's in your drinking water too. How I said, sodium polyacrylate keeps your water from congealing. Well, we had to put regulations on that to keep our water system from flooding with acrylamide, which can linger for up to 2 months in a closed system. Typical guidance states that drinking water has a limit of 0.5 parts per billion, though the EU, notably stricter with this sort of stuff, sets it at 0.1 parts per billion. Guidance exists for commercial products as well, with a tolerance level set at 100 to 500 parts per million, as well as for the soil, where the maximum is 70 parts per million. This isn't stuff you want to see a lot of anywhere. Now there are ways to degrade it even further. Ozone is fairly effective, as is chlorine, which is used the most. In fact, drinking water has about 1.5 parts per billion in chlorine, mainly to mitigate bacteria and break down unwanted chemicals. Only thing is, as I was reading, I found out chlorine mixed with acrylamide degrades the acrylamide into chloroform. Ooh. An astute observer might realize, hey, we use potassium polyacrylate in industrial farming, and that would be correct, my young, unfortunately placed student. Of course, when potassium polyacrylate comes into contact with calcium, it breaks off the potassium part of the equation, leaving the polyacrylate part to degrade into acrylamide, and then we're back at square one all over again. Before I continue, I need to reiterate that I am open to correction by someone more knowledgeable than myself. I do not know what I'm talking about when it comes to chemistry, and right now I'm mainly regurgitating things I've read through several studies, articles, papers, and I'm hoping that I'm being coherent. Anyways, always fact check me. If I'm right, however, then polyacrylate doesn't just break down into acrylamide, it breaks down into aldehydes too. We're getting way into the chemical breakdown on this.
Mm-hmm.
And I am speed reading where we're going. Talk about the rain.
Yeah, this is definitely like a rabbit hole of like, oh, I was looking into this, and then I got like really
the person got
like
distracted by the thing and went into the breakdown of the chemical thing.
Explanations.
Okay, to go to the next header. It's probably not what you expected when you tuned in. I'd like to make it up to you by digging into a few other times where it should follow. Thank you. Okay, you admit you're aware we're gone.
This is a moment in the scripting where someone's gonna come to me and be like, yeah, I know you think that this part's interesting. You could cut this like entire section out because it's like it's just stuff that you think is interesting, but it's not adding to your overall message.
It's the detour that was taken and then away from the thing. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes it rains fish. Water spouts will suck up fish into the clouds, where the wind takes them for a ride into a rainstorm, and then it proceeds to drop some funny-smelling raindrops. That's the fish on any given place. This can happen up to 40 times a year, and sometimes it's not fish, it's frogs. Yes, Magnolia. Yeah. Just imagine walking home, and it starts to rain when suddenly a largemouth bass smacks you in the face. At least you'd have dinner, I suppose. There's an incident called the Kentucky Meat Shower, when, you guessed it, meat showered down in Kentucky in 1876. This I heard of. This is fucking weird. On March 3rd, residents of Olympia Springs in Kentucky witnessed a rain of fleshy meat pelt their town, falling from a clear sky. Though the exact cause is still a mystery, the main theory seems to be vultures in flight began vomiting up their meals, which they sometimes do to lighten their load or to scare off predators. Apparently, when one vulture vomits, the other flock tends to vomit as well. That grossed you out? Maybe you'll enjoy this more. Golf balls have rained down on Florida, which seems fitting. The town of Punta Gorda in 1969 got hit with some water spouts near an abundance of golf courses, which sucked up the golf balls and returned them to sender. Money fell from the sky in a German town one time, fulfilling all our wishes, just in the wrong place. Surprisingly and frustratingly, the woman who collected it turned it into the police. I'm sure some of your days got a little darker with that sentence. So to make it up to you all, I'll tell you about the mud showers, which you get when you mix rain and dust storms. The dirt mixed into the water to create mud, which then falls from the sky. Happened in New Zealand in 1902, and I'm sure all the locals were happy about cleaning it up. That's about it. No shocker ending, no wild wrap-up, just weird rain. We explored quite a bit this time, but when you boil it all down, maybe there's just some talk about chemicals, and the West is just weird rain. Sometimes you get a banger ending, the awesome one-liner. Pretty cool when one finally just falls out of the sky and into your lap. I cherish those times. But others, you get clouds, you get wind, you get rain. If you're really unlucky, you get a slime ball to the face. I'm surprised they didn't mention planes overhead with their toilets, which sometimes empty out and in a couple of instances, they have emptied out over people's houses.
Yeah, you just got like a.
That's disgusting.
And there have been lawsuits.
Yeah.
Because there's literal toilet on my house. Yeah.
And you hope you can track it to the right plane and everything.
Okay. Yeah, that's that was all right.
No micronations of Australia.
Not quite. But I do remember hearing about the meat shower. I didn't know that it was concluded that it might have been vulture vomit, which is kind of fucking wild.
Yeah, because I immediately think, like, depending on how big the pieces of meat are, because I read that and I think, like, oh, like a slab of like meat falls in front of you. I assume like a tornado hit, like a meat processing plant or something.
Every single one of these. That's my thought, is there's a bunch of wind that sucked up objects that are too heavy to evaporate. And then after nature like killed off the tornado, then they just dropped everywhere.
Down somewhere.
Yeah. And it couldn't last like a half hour. Like none of these precipitation events are actually like persistent. It would just be like a single instance of walking outside and finding what happened here, Yeah, that makes way more sense to me. And I guess I mean, yeah, that's like, because full on frogs, like what the fuck?
Yeah, that's because that's a very specific like animal that it's just that. Because if it's like like all the animals of the ecosystem, that's like, okay, well that just freak weather occurrence pick something up, but it's just frogs. That's weird. That's when you're starting to go like, okay, where's the Bible? Where's
where are we at exactly?
Where's Moses?
Yeah. Okay, sure.